my beauties, and welcome back to In the Mist. Analia Raven here. I am so excited to be back. It's been such a ride. I'm gonna say it's a ride. It wasn't terrible. It hasn't been super stressful, but it's definitely been a ride. Last few months with this pandemic that we are all going through, and who would have thought that this would happen? And not to mention the killer hornets that are now appearing. It's like we can't get a break. It's right. Am I right? Yeah, I think I'm right. So with that being said, everybody grab a hot beverage of some kind. I am drinking a lovely coffee that I made in my kitchen. So, and let's get this video started. Before that, I just want to give a huge shout out to all the essential workers out there, and I want to give myself a pat on the back for being an essential worker. I work at the hospital, and I'm not a doctor or a nurse or anything like that. I work in registration, but I do know how difficult it can be to see that whole process going down with people, you know, not being able to visit their loved ones and the strict restrictions that are in place and everything. So I just want to give everyone a huge shout out and a huge appreciation to every essential worker out there, no matter how small or huge their job is. You've really been a trooper through this whole pandemic thing, and I'm just blown away by all the people that are helping everybody else out and that are being compassionate, and for those who cannot visit their loved ones that are in the hospital and that are in a bad way. So yes, just giving a little moment of silence for that. And then going into the video for today, I'm going to be talking about an article that I wrote for a wonderful artist who came out with this wonderful magazine, and it features one of my articles in here, and it's called the Starlight Emporium Magazine. This is the spring issue. I just got this in a couple days ago. I'm so excited because I have something published in here that I'm going to read to you. And so the Starlight Emporium Magazine is by Lusicovi Creative, and I know the artist personally, and her work is so beautiful and so inspiring, and it's just all about seeing the wonders and the magics of the world, and seeing that through positivity and inspiration and art. And it's just a gorgeous concept. And the art featured in this magazine is from many different artists, and the other articles and poetry are also featured in, and she also features in a little piece by people, somebody who's traveled and is writing about their experiences or what they did on their travels. So that's also in here, and it's just full of beautiful arts, including mine. So yes, I'm totally love this magazine. So here's the cover. Isn't this art beautiful, you guys? Like, look at that. The spring issue. So amazing. And I will definitely link her website down below so you guys can check out her art and what she does, and the magazine. And the summer issue is going to be coming out, so I can't wait for that one. And sorry if the camera moved around a bit because the cat just bumped it. So it's been a while since we talked about a maiden goddess, and so the article that I wrote in here is about Persephone, maiden goddess of spring and queen of the underworld. And so I'm going to read that to you and talk a little bit about Persephone, because many times, I know in my practice, I forget that she is also a goddess of spring, and most of the time, more often than not, we're always focusing on Persephone's descent into the underworld and celebrating her through the darker halves of the year. So that being said, I'm going to get started reading this, and then afterward we'll give a little chat about Persephone and her spring aspects as well. So here we go. There are many versions of the myth Persephone, or Kori as she is sometimes known. The myth of Persephone is one of the oldest of the Greek myths. Her story began as most young girls' stories often begin, running carefree and blissfully unaware of the troubles that lie ahead. Now, most of these stories of drama, love, and tragedy start with once upon a time on a dark and stormy night. This one, however, began on a bright and sunny afternoon. Once upon a time, on a bright and sunny afternoon, a young girl was playing happily with her friends in a flowery meadow. The girls were running through the meadow, laughing, sharing secrets, and picking wildflowers. Corey was the most beautiful of the maidens. It was said that her beauty was the epitome of spring and light. With every footfall, the maiden left flowers blooming in her wake. Corey's power of growth came from her mother, Demeter, goddess of vegetation, who was sitting nearby. Demeter loved her daughter Corey very much. Demeter's love radiated through the land, and the earth enjoyed lush fields and bounteous fruits and vegetables, wafting rich fragrances in the warm breeze. The living world was ignorant to what fate had in store. Nevertheless, Corey and her friends flitted joyously through the meadow of roses, violets, hyacinths, bright purple crocuses, and royal blue irises, gathering them in their baskets. Their laughter rang to the heavens. The father of the gods, Zeus, peered down from the clouds and watched Corey as she strayed from her companions. Zeus was Corey's father and brother of the Dark Lord and king of the underworld, Hades. Hades longed for the beautiful maiden Corey for himself. Naturally, he appeared before Zeus and asked for her hand in marriage. Now Zeus knew that Demeter would never approve of the union. Zeus instead devised a plan for Hades to ensnare Corey with the help of the beautiful narcissus flower. As Corey glided wistfully through the meadow, her eyes rested upon the brilliance of the narcissus flower, a flower that is said to have 100 blooms of the deepest blue. Corey was enchanted by its beauty, but as she reached for the flower, the earth began to tremble and split open. The lord of the underworld and king of the multitudinous dead emerged from this gaping crevice in a golden chariot drawn by 4 black horses. The dark lord towered over the frightened maiden, peering down at her with an unyielding gaze that bewildered her into a stupor. It wasn't until Corey heard the crack of his whip that she realized that she was held fast to his side and descending down into the darkness of the crevice from which the mysterious god had come. Her heart sank in terror as she entered the underworld. Corey's cries echoed to the high hills and reached the depths of the sea. Corey's descent into the underworld would change her life forever. It would transform her from maiden to woman, from carefree days in the sun to sovereign of her own domain. Corey was now on her way to becoming Persephone. Corey's mother, Demeter, heard her cries and raced across the land to her daughter's rescue. She was too late, and Corey was gone, nowhere to be seen. Demeter grew cold and stricken with grief and anger. The living world became a frozen desert, barren of vegetation. No vegetable, fruit, or grain would grow in the icy temperatures, and people began to suffer for it. In the meantime, the king of the underworld, Hades, implored sweet Persephone to stay with him and become his bride. He explained his actions, that Zeus helped him lure Persephone. He told her that she would become queen and rule by his side. Persephone was reluctant to accept this proposal. She longed for her mother and the warmth of the living world. Hades persisted, whispering to her the mysteries of the underworld and her queenship. He told her how much he loved her, and that she would want for nothing, and that no harm would ever come to her. Persephone was still reluctant, but with the mysteries that shrouded Hades and his realm intrigued her, so she stayed. However, Zeus was witnessing the struggles of the living world as they tried to survive Demeter's wrath. He decides that it was time to bring Persephone back. Zeus sent the messenger god Hermes to reason with Hades and allow Persephone to be reunited with Demeter. Hermes traveled down to the underworld and was taken aback at the sight of Hades and Persephone sitting on thrones beside one another. Hermes was expecting to see a frail and frightened Corey, the maiden goddess of spring. However, Corey, the maiden goddess of spring, was not at all frightened or frail. Corey or Persephone was more beautiful and terrible as the rising dawn. Her strength and power as queen of the underworld struck Hermes with awe. Persephone adjusted well to her life as sovereign and wife of Hades. As queen of the underworld and goddess of spring, Persephone found her calling. She is the protector of souls and acts as a guiding light to new arrivals. But Hermes had a message to give. He told Hades that Zeus requested Persephone's return to the land of the living, which suffers a barren fate because of Demeter's grief over her missing daughter. Persephone was torn between the joy and love she would have by being reunited with her mother and staying in the underworld with her husband. She wanted both, but she did not know how that could be possible. Hades went to his wife's side and gave her the seeds of the most sacred fruit in the underworld, the pomegranate. As Persephone pressed the seeds to her lips, she listened to the words of her husband. Hades told Persephone that he would miss her terribly. However, she must return to the land of the living. He told her that her duties as daughter and goddess of spring matter as well. Hades whispered to her that the pomegranate would forever bind them together and that he would wait for her return. And so, Persephone returned to the living world. As she ascended from the underworld, life began to stir and birth anew. Flowers bloomed with each footfall. The sun ever so slowly began to melt the frozen tundra. Demeter was overjoyed as she embraced her beloved daughter Kore once more. But her joy was stifled briefly, as she knew, as most mothers often know, her Kore was somehow different, and life would never be the same. Regardless of that knowing, she was still happy to see her again. The living world quickened to life and was overflowing with rich green bounty. Although Persephone was happy to feel the heat of the sun and embrace her mother, she knew that all the beauties of the living world were fleeting, temporary. She knew that all things must end with the coming cold and, like herself, pass into the power of death. That is the way of things. That is her calling. Persephone, maiden goddess of spring and renewal, and queen of the underworld, was the eternal wanderer, living between two worlds and balancing both. Birth, death, and rebirth. Persephone descends into the underworld and embraces its mysteries, only to ascend up to the land of the living, to herald in the birthings of spring. So that is just one article of the Starlight Emporium Mini Zine. And like I said before, I will definitely link that below so you can check out the Lusicovi Creative website and other art pieces that this wonderful artist has made. And also with Persephone, that piece I had in mind, I was focusing on the eternal wanderer. That really rang out when I was researching her myths. And most of the myths of Persephone, it talked about how she was, taken against her will, and yes, that may be true in some cases and in some interpretations of the myth. She also chose to stay and be that protective force in the underworld and that guiding light for new souls. And she also is, like I said, the eternal wanderer, balancing both worlds, the land of the living and the land of the dead. She is Persephone and Kore, or Kore, as however you want to pronounce her name, bringing in rebirth and dying at the same time, like all things do. And that is the way, that is the balance of things. That is the way that our fragile world exists, is things are birthed and they live and then they die. And I know we just passed Beltane, the celebration, the fire celebrations of the great marriage between god and goddess, or in other traditions, fertility. I see Persephone and Hades around this time because of their great marriage, because of how they came together and how she learned a new side of herself that wouldn't have been probably discovered if it wasn't for Hades and if it wasn't for her understanding of how that realm works. And so I really enjoy working with Persephone, and she's still a great big part of my life today. And just working with her, you can work with her in your shadow work as well as the lighter half of the year when you're doing self-love and when you're doing things you're bringing things into your life, manifesting things. She's a really great goddess for that, and she's not all light and happy and spring and childish. She went on that hero's journey or heroine's journey and discovered that that side of herself needed to be explored, and she needed to really take control of her own domain and be her own self. Even though her mother, yes, a beautiful protective force of her was there in her life, she needed to tell her mom, like, hey, I need to do this, and you may not agree with who I love and who I choose to be at this time, but I need you to respect my wishes, and I need you to let me go. And so for people, or for women who have that kind of mother in their life, that's, you know, it's hard to let them go. And or for mothers that are having a hard time letting go of their daughters, you can really work with Persephone in that way and see, oh, it's okay to let them explore, to let them out of your sights, to let them see what they can become, and maybe they themselves will find their true calling and their passions, because that's what Persephone did. She found her passion and the love of her life, and she can guide and help people or souls along the way. And I just find that really powerful and moving, that she can make those decisions. And she also allows people like her husband, Hades, and her mother to help her and guide her along the way, so she's not doing it all alone. She's still like surrounded by, you know, people who love her and people who want to see her succeed in whatever aspects she's doing, whether it's being the goddess of spring and bringing in new life, or the queen of the underworld and guiding souls and protecting souls with a fierce power. There's just a lot that goes into the goddess Persephone that may not often be seen when you first read some of her myths in some of her stories. And when she's Kore, she's often overlooked and seen as this, you know, this childish figure. And and that's most of the time, and at least in my experiences when I was younger, I'm often overlooked and seen as somebody that's, you know, you're just, not even just when I was younger, but now, oh, you're just young and you don't know yet. You have a long way to go. And I'm 29, so I can really relate to Persephone in that way, and finding myself and finding my calling, and often being overlooked when I really want my voice to be heard. And that also shows that she became sovereign, and she is known as like this terrible beauty, because she has like a hard rule, and sorry, my cat's down here, and she has like this strength about her that just radiates off of her. And even Hermes was like, whoa, who is this? This is not the same person I was sent for. And I just really love that, because even somebody who is just young and who is like starting out in their craft still has a voice and still has lessons to teach others, and, you know, still needs to be heard, just like Persephone. And even though that she had to grow a little bit and learn a few things about the way of the world, she's still important. She still took that. She still has her youth. She still has her lightness, her light about her, even in the darkest parts of the realms. So thank you for stopping by at In the Mist. Analia Raven here, and I can't wait for the next video, and I definitely can't wait for the next issue, the summer issue, because like I said, this is a spring issue of the Starlight Emporium, and that art is so beautiful. That's just the cover. So there's plenty of different artists in here, and there's different articles in here, and causing inspiration and really showing the magic of the world. And I just think that's a wonderful little project, and I'm glad that I was able to contribute, and I'm definitely glad that I was able to talk about Persephone. Like I said, this has been a while since our last maiden, and Persephone definitely has a special place in my heart, and yeah. So with that being said, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Have you ever worked with Persephone? How did you feel when you did? Or if you ever feel called to work with Persephone, don't hesitate to ask questions, or, you know, just leave comments or help each other out down there. And don't forget to subscribe to In the Mist and Hi Raven.